Well, Senator Sessions, first of all, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I know you've been talking loud and clear about the fact that we should not have recessed this week. And I know President Obama tried to claim credit for that, but it's because of your leadership and really the members of the Republican conference here in the Senate that we said, no, we're bankrupting America. We need to stay here and we need to start debating this issue. And unfortunately, that is not really what we've been doing this week. It's sad. You know, one word that I use all the time now that I've come here to Washington is unbelievable. I mean, it's simply unbelievable that tomorrow will mark 800 days that we haven't passed a budget. That's unbelievable. You know, my background is in business for the last 34 years. I've had to produce budgets on time. I've had people produce budgets for me on time. You know, in business, even a small little business, it's inconceivable that you'd tell an accountant, to say, hey, okay, now make sure your budget's, we need to have that on our desk on April 15th. I would say 99.9% of those accountants, those controllers would have a budget on time on April 15th. And we're dealing with the United States of America. We're talking about our financial future here, the fate of America. And the Democrats here in the Senate have failed to meet that obligation 2 years in a row. I mean, it's simply unbelievable. It's so incredibly irresponsible. I think the Senate has been guilty of willful neglect. I think the phrase I've been using, the Senate has been fiddling while America's going broke. And that's sad. And now I think, as you pointed out as well, what does the financial future of America rest on? Some secret talks? Talks between a few individuals going on behind closed doors, far from the view of the American public. And rather than an orderly process where a plan is presented that can be viewed by the American public, that can be debated in open, the way our founders envisioned on the floor of the Senate, this historic floor, instead of using the process that we should have been using, what's going to happen? Are we going to have a result, a negotiated settlement, dropped in our lap, a couple days before this deadline date? Is that what's going to happen? Is that really how the financial fate of America is going to be decided? I personally find that process disgusting. That's why I stood up last Tuesday on the floor of the Senate and I said, unless we start seriously addressing this problem, the bankrupting of America, in the open, in the bright light of day, I was going to begin to object. I was going to begin to withhold my consent. And I tell you, I was heartened by the support I got by my Republican colleagues because, let's face it, we understand how urgent the situation is. We understand how dire our financial situation is. We are willing to sit down and work with anybody who will seriously address the fact that we are driving America toward bankruptcy. But we need a willing partner. And up to this point in time, I haven't seen one. I mean, the fact that the only plan that we've seen is the president's budget. 4¼ inches thick, 2,400 pages long. How many thousands of man-hours did that document take to produce? It was so unserious, it would have added more than $12 trillion to our nation's debt in the next 10 years. It would have continued the bankrupting of America. It would have made us go broke. It was so unserious, it failed here in the United States Senate by a vote of 0 to 97. Not one Democrat senator found that bill serious enough to give it a vote. That's the only plan I've seen. I woke up this morning to a couple news reports, and there was more detail about what the administration might plan to do fed to reporters than fed to a member of Congress. I'm sorry to be so blunt about this, but that is a disgusting process. The American people deserve far better. And I guess today what I'm standing up here asking, I want to see a plan, and I want to see a budget, and I want to see it to give us enough time so we can actually analyze it, and we can debate it, and we can pass the real structural reforms that we can actually solve this problem. And I'm calling on the President, I'm calling the Democrats in this Senate to produce that plan so we can have an open debate on it. That's kind of how I'm thinking. Well, Senator Blunt, I'd like to pick up on your point in terms of how unserious this week has been. Just a comparison to businesses. About 5 years ago, I bought a business out of bankruptcy. And I watched those business owners over the course of 2 or 3 years struggle to make a go of that business. You would not believe the number of hours those people, those hardworking Americans, put in to save that business. It didn't work. They went into reorganization under the bankruptcy laws. I bought that business out of bankruptcy. I saw how incredibly hard my team worked to make that business survive, and it did survive. I mean, these are individuals putting in 16, 17, 18, 20 hours a day to make a product, to build a good life for themselves and their family, to provide employment, jobs. This is the American spirit. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. That's what Americans do day in and day out, whether you own a business or whether you contribute your effort, your labor to make your business successful, the one you work for successful. That's what Americans do. What has this president done? What has this Congress, what has this Senate done? In the last 6 months since I've been here, we've passed 6 laws, 6 bills that have become law. 3 of those had to do with the continuing resolutions of last year's business. Funding the government for this year, those were laws that were passed, should have been passed a year ago. But it was left over for us to do that. We had 2 bills to extend the Patriot Act. And if you take a look at how that was even done, last minute, rush. Very little time for debate. You really couldn't even get amendments in there. And then, of course, the other one is we kind of cleaned up a little bit, just a little part of the health care law that dealt with 1099s would have been a nightmare. It would have cost billions of dollars to comply and not brought in any revenue. So we finally got that off the books, thankfully. The other bills we debated here, we spent 16 weeks debating 3 bills. The total dollar amount of those bills is $20 billion. That's about 0.5% of what this federal government will spend this year. So we've spent 16 weeks debating 0.5% of our $3.6 trillion a year budget. Now that, in my mind, is the definition of being not serious. And of course, you've said it's been $799. Tomorrow's going to be 800 days since we've actually passed a budget. And so now this week we've spent 15 hours of debate. We called it a sense of the Senate resolution. It really should be called the nonsense of the Senate. I mean, that's what's been occurring this week, and it's a tragedy. It is a tragedy. But again, that's why I stood up and started to object, and I will continue to do that until we actually start getting serious, until we actually see a plan, a budget that we can start debating. The reason I ran is because we're bankrupting the nation. I mean, I love America. We love America. And when I watch what's happening, and when I saw how broken Washington is, when I saw him pass the health care law, that from my standpoint, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, our first child, my daughter Carrie, was born with a very serious congenital heart defect. Dedicated doctors and surgeons saved her life the first day, and then 8 months later, when her heart was the size of a plum, another dedicated surgeon, team of medical professionals totally reconstructed the upper chamber of her heart. Her heart operates backwards now. But she's 28 years old and she's a nurse herself in a neonatal intensive care unit. And when I heard President Obama say that, these doctors, they'll take out a set of tonsils for a few extra bucks, I found that outrageous. And then when this Congress and this president signed the health care law, I know the result of that. I mean, it is designed to lead to a government takeover of our health care system. And all we have to do is take a look at Canada and Britain. I mean, we don't have to theorize what that's going to result in. It'll lower the quality of care. It will result in rationing. And the medical innovation that saved my daughter's life and millions of others, I mean, it really is America where medical miracles are created. I think that innovation is going to come to a grinding halt. So that's just the quality aspect of the health care bill, but it is going to destroy our budget. I wrote a piece with Douglas Holtz-Aiken, ex-CBO director. Rather than $93 billion a year, when this thing kicks in as it's designed to do, and a large percentage of Americans lose their health care employer coverage, get dumped in exchanges, we're talking about $500 billion, or maybe $900 billion. But I see we run out of time, but that's why I ran, because we're bankrupting America, Senator.